Excellent. There we go. And so, yeah, welcome to Ether Cosmology Roundtable number 45. Today, we don't really have a standard presentation where we're going to pick a topic and go deep on it or present on it or anything like that. Where we've talked meteors in the past or climate change or special relativity or whatever. Tonight, we're going to do more of a meta discussion about how we approach researching topics. And so if you want to look into something yourself, or you want to start keeping, your own papers on hand, so, doing your own highlights of these papers, or even just taking your own notes. Maybe you've seen Shane's famous Shane SQL database with Shane's famous database where he posts all of his wonderful content, and you're wondering, how can I do a database like that? Well, you have come to the right place. And actually, on that note, we'll talk a little later about when we get into that. Alan now has published some of his notes as well, so you can also check out Alan's notes, or Alan's database, as maybe you would want to call it. So in any case, while we were getting ready for this is going to be a fairly casual discussion, but while we were kind of hanging out here in chat beforehand here, Xavier popped in, and the topic of, what is even a credible source kind of came up. And I thought, maybe that's like the best place to start with all of this is like, what is even a good source or good resource? Maybe before we even talk about tools and keeping track of papers and such, like, why would we even want to do that? And so before I give my thoughts on that, Alan, do you have any, or anyone have any thoughts on that? Alan, why? Go ahead. You say no.
You want to reset my internet? I'm lagging really hard.
Yeah, you're roboting. Yeah. Uh-oh. All right, well, we're going to have a quick little few minutes here on Alan's end, I believe. Probably take him about 5 minutes or so. But in the meantime, I'll just kind of fill in my thoughts on it. Essentially, when you're trying to talk to people about scientific topics that are maybe, come from credentialed discussions, or where it's like you're trying to present someone with a paper and maybe their response is going to be something along the lines of sorry, I'm approaching this wrong. But essentially, I don't really always think that going to papers is necessarily the best primary source. On the one hand, it's pretty dang good because a lot of times they'll actually document their methodology. So in a lot of cases, even if they're quote unquote confirming special or general relativity, you can look at their methodology and look right there and be like, oh yeah, I don't disagree with you. Like, there is a theoretical reference frame in which your conclusion is correct, and you say as much in the paper, but I just don't, I don't really buy into your theoretical reference frame. I just live in reality, and I make my measurements in reality, and I don't need to role play just to, make the ground beneath my feet be moving. So, in any case, the point is that, I don't necessarily go to papers because they're my favorite resource, but more because if I'm going to try and get someone to listen to me, and I'm going to try and source something to them, in a lot of cases, it's the best way to get someone to listen to you, especially if you can highlight a particular sentence or a particular portion that is, clear and concise, and in whole, you don't want to be cherry picking. Then, you can, that's, in my view, one of the best ways to persuade someone of your point. And not necessarily even just papers, but legal documents can be really good for that type of thing as well. Contracts, patents, it depends on, what kind of discussion you're trying to have. But in any case, so that's part of why we use papers and books, and especially papers. We use a lot of published papers. In a lot of cases, we'll source like here at Æther Cosmology, we'll source all sorts of different publications. And even Ruyang Wang, even though he was actually, his work is archived in Cambridge, so it's kind of silly to try and write it off. But he originally published in some journal that people don't take seriously or whatever. So people use that as an excuse to write off his work. But people will always find excuses to write things off. Like I said earlier, the thing that's really useful to look for in these papers is the methodology. And that's where you can really start to look at, if you're going to try and have an argument with someone about a paper, or you're going to try and make a point against a paper or whatever, if you can look at the actual methodology and point to the flaw in the methodology, then that's, in my opinion, the most precise, clear way to essentially argue on those grounds. Anyways, Alan, are you back yet? No. Okay. Well, then I will keep rambling about source material.
Well, one thing you said,
yeah, go ahead.
If I may interject, the one thing that you said that was key to all this is why the papers are your go-to. Doesn't mean I have a paper, therefore it's true, you should trust me. Is because they're demonstrating the methodology. We've heard, and I'll be mindful of the language because I know you're streaming on YouTube, but we know of an event that happened in 2020, and we were told to trust the science on said event because there was a lot of misconceptions of what's going on. A lot of people didn't trust the science. We wanted that science demonstrated, and they said pretty much trust the authoritative sources, aka the mainstream media, was the authoritative source. What makes them the authoritative? What what makes them more reliable than the source that I find on the internet? Right? They don't have an answer to that. It was just they don't want to muddy the waters in terms of the misinformation that was being fed. And actual science is a method, the scientific method, IVDVs. You know the drill. The methodology and how that's interpreted is the key. So thank you for that.
Yeah, well said. And what you alluded to there, that's exactly where I kind of got thrown in to doing, digging into papers myself, and started that's why recently when I, within the last couple of years, when I started reassessing all my cosmological beliefs, and, my beliefs about quantum physics and such, this kind of all resurfaced again, but I kind of, because of what you alluded to earlier, I kind of got my feet wet with it per se, with trying to look at, essentially logical proof. What is logical proof? Or how does logic work? But when Alan gets back, we'll start talking a bit more about specific tech tools and such. But I also think that, especially before we get into that stuff, that this is much more important because, we don't want to give the false impression that, like, oh, because it's in a paper, it must be real or whatever. It's quite the opposite of that. It's more like a paper just happens to be a good venue in a lot of cases, or a good source where they'll have explicitly defined their methodology, and that's where the value of that comes into play, as far as I'm concerned. Reputations, there's an argument to be made there, especially if something has, if a publisher has, shown, malintent in the past or whatever, or then I would say, I guess there's an argument to be made that maybe you should take it with a grain of salt. But if you still, depending on who published the work, I would say that's more important. And looking at the actual methodology, and if you have a contention with something purely over the publisher, that's quite a weak contention. Your contention should be with their methodology, or it should be with their conclusion. Unless, or if your contention is otherwise, then essentially what you're doing is you are accusing that writer, or whoever published that paper, of lying about their results. And so that's a quite an accusation to hurl, especially when you're talking about things like measuring the speed of light and such. But In any case, how are we doing there, Alan?
Fantastic. I'm back. I'm pretty sure I'm good now. Thank you.
Cool. Are you live again?
I caught a little bit. Possibly. I hope so. If not, it'll be on Æther Cause.
Okay, cool. So you'll just
But yeah. So to kind of touch on what you were talking about earlier, using papers, for arguments or like showing where you're drawing your line of logic, can be really useful, especially because we're in the arena where we're arguing all the time. So it's like to kind of show where you're getting what you're, to give validity to what you're putting forward is very important, right? Because somebody could read it and have a different interpretation, but it's cool to leave that back. It's cool to leave it out there, so that people can have that resource available to them, right? Like that's the most important part of what we're doing here too, is making sure that all this stuff is shareable.
Yeah, and we'll go into that in a bit here too. But before we move on to specific tools, I'll say like one last kind of like meta thought about just in general research. Like just let's say you're just trying to learn about something new. Some advice I've heard a couple times and I think has worked well for me, specifically with starting to try and learn more about physics, was to go back to, rather than start with the super advanced stuff, it's really useful to look at the foundational works, and that's usually a really good place to start so you can actually build a foundation of knowledge on something. And there's a few different routes to go with that, right? Like you can look at more general like physics books to start with, but also another approach that I've found really useful is to kind of look through the history of how conclusions have been drawn about certain topics. So when people are talking about, say, for instance, GPS is proof of special relativity because of its proof of time dilation with the way that atomic clock decay works. That was the the claim, the assertion that I first heard. Well, while over the last year or two trying to wrap my head around what's actually happening there, and listening to people like Alan talk about that, and reading works from people like Wong and Ron Hatch, what really helped to actually understand what's going on with that was to actually go back to Einstein and then look at the 1905, the first paper where he actually talked about special relativity. But then, that wasn't enough either. Because then it's like, how did Einstein get there? And so then we had to go back further, and we went back to, to Maxwell. And, how did they said they knew the speed of light. Well, how did they say that they knew the speed of light? How did they measure that? So that's why we got into to Maxwell, and looking at his equations to, derive the quote unquote speed of light, or the induction rate of light. And then you look before that, you start looking to like, well, how did Maxwell get there? And then you go back and you look at all of the experiments that Faraday did for for years and years. And so like looking back to the groundwork of how this stuff all works helps you to have a better understanding of what, especially with something like the speed of light, where it's got on top, it's like this crazy house of cards to explain special relativity at this point. It was really helpful to go back to the more foundational philosophical underpinnings of how we got to this place got here in the first place. So maybe that's applicable for whatever it is that you're planning to research. Maybe hopefully that's hopefully someone gleans some kind of usefulness from that. But in any case. So yeah, that's kind of, I guess, my thoughts on source material. Does anyone else have any final thoughts on, before we start talking specifically about like research tools and stuff? Anyone else have any thoughts on sources, primary sources?
Well, frankly, I would definitely back up exactly what you just last said about the imperative of going back to the fundamentals of what the assertions are and looking at the foundations, so to speak, logically, materially, physically, that have been laid down by the mainstream, that it's in every arena as well. It's in something they may say about the astrophysical realm. It's something may say about the geophysical realm, and especially even something as simple and fundamental as gravity. It really does pay to what the only expression I ever use is do your homework. It's go back and take a look at the things you thought they were telling you right at the beginning and take a much closer look at those to see upon what you can actually logically build in terms of your own understanding of any kind of model in any of those arenas, all of them, in fact. That it's necessary because they're almost seamless how they relate to each other by the time you get to the end of the path. Couldn't recommend it more.
Fantastic.
One thing that I would add too that's helped me, because I'm such a novice at all of this, but just learning the language and paying really, really close attention to you know, paying really close attention to how they speak about things and where they use words like theory and assumption and, that kind of stuff, where they estimate. Paying close attention to those kinds of words can really tell you exactly, you know, where their holes are, I guess you could say, which does just back up what Stone just said and what you had said prior. But learning the language and learning the verbiage of all of it has been really helpful too, because to just sit and listen to you guys speak, it makes sense why so many people would claim word salad, but the bottom line is they just don't understand what you're saying. It's not that you're saying word salad, it makes no sense in their mind because they quite literally don't have the vocabulary for it. So that's been one thing that I've really been studying.
I concur definitely with the first half of what you just said about the language that they use, and I've stressed that a lot on Telegram for the past couple of years with the group that I hang with most of the time. That it's even more subtle than the ones that you laid down. It's words like could, and might, and may, and should, and expect. Look for the use of those very subtle connector words when they put ideas together or they try to establish a concept, and check their level of confidence in what they're saying, what they're actually asserting. Are they saying this is because of that? Or are they saying this seems like this or is because of probably that? And you're going to get a lot farther in your interpretive skills in everything else you read subsequently.
Yeah, I'll just corroborate what Mester just said. Listening to you, Shane, Stone, Alan, Toby, Austin, it's that most people have a very vaguely apprehended, inchoate idea of what they even think they believe, whether it's about the Copernican principle, here, the heliocentric model, the graticule. To get as specific as you can with language and really define your terms and drill down, you'll realize very quickly that this thing's a paper tiger. It's a house of cards. And if you're new to this, like I am, Mister is, get smart, study up real quick, look through the ADL website and get yourself Stone's book and read. Actually, read. Don't just listen in on the discords, but read every PDF that they're throwing down and get smart.
Yeah, dude, I
Dude,
so
what did I
agree.
walk into? This is awesome. What are we doing today? I thought this was different, I think.
Well, real quick, man, that's funny you say that all because like I agree big time, but it's also funny because it's really overwhelming, right? Like at least for me it was and still is.
Yeah, it is.
You feel like you've got to relearn everything you learned. And you feel this like urgency to do it in some cases, especially if you're, dealing with some ignorant people or something. You feel like somehow if you can learn it all, you'll be able to explain it to them.
Yeah,
you can
I
learn
said
it
this to Austin one time after the debate that he had with that guy Dave. I'm like, it's not your problem. I can explain it to you. I can't understand it for you. So a lot of times you get
One of
talking to
my
people, it's like
favorites.
they don't even know what they don't know what they're saying. They don't know what the words are. They don't even know what their model claims. So when I really started to dig into this, like especially hearing when like you and Stone and especially Shane when he gets cooking, it's like what the fuck is going? Like, pardon language. I know this is on YouTube. It's like what the heck is going on? I got to like replay, look at the transcript, like get the terms, look up the terms, and like really pour through it. So it's been a lot of homework, but it's been very rewarding. So you guys are, I don't know, yeah, buy a beer sometime. Yeah, you're
I
doing
don't think
God's
we're
work.
doing. I don't think we're doing anything different than you. We're just doing more of it, or we're looking in different directions, and we've covered some of the path that you are now covering. The process doesn't change.
Well, but to be fair, like Stone, your background is sort of prepped you for asking or even correcting some of the questions that you might ask. So in that sense, you're ahead of the curve for
That's
newbies like
fair.
me. Yeah,
That's fair. But it's a skill you're developing. You know.
yeah. I mean, your book alone, I got that almost 8 months ago now, and I'm like, oh my god. I got
Oh, Stone has a
just
book.
Yeah, what?
Yeah. Which
yeah.
book are we
Right.
talking about?
What?
My book? Did I write a book?
I think
You wrote-
Jack Stone's book gets confused as your book.
Oh, wow.
Data. I have his book
Cool.
too,
Have I got
yeah.
a ghostwriter going on?
Yeah, well, I will say the person that wrote that book used to be known as Flat Earth Data, and he is that you're talking about the Jack Stone's book, right?
The Delusion of the 21st Century, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
swear to God, he's cribbing all your stuff. I mean, he's taking notes.
Well, I'm not surprised that you could kind of think they're the same person because yeah, he ended up using that moniker Stone, and FE Data was a very analytical guy. I wish he would come around more still. But as far as I understand, the story behind that book is that he was kind of mocking Flat Earth, and he called his moniker on Discord here for a long time was Flat Earth Data. And he called himself that because he was like mocking flat earthers and saying they don't have any data. And so he started setting out to like collect flat earth data, and then realized, or he ended up becoming a flat earther. And the FE Data nickname kind of ended up.
He collected all the data.
That's
hilarious.
It ended up
Became
kind
a
of
flat
flipping
earther.
on its head. So FE Data actually just became like the flat Earth guy that had all the data to back it. And he was actually
It's all, especially all Shane stuff, the azimuthal grid of vision, and all the Aristophanes. He's got a whole
yes,
chapter on.
he
It's all
was
your
the first
shit.
person I ever heard anyone talk about the radius of the eye, like the resolution value of the eye, potentially being where we're deriving the globe from in the first place.
Yeah, dude, he was super excited to see what I thought about that, and I didn't realize that we had both come to like the same 80% conclusion. Like he was almost at where I was, but just missing one little piece. I remember telling him that.
Yeah. So
That is poetry writing
I was
itself.
just looking at I just rewatched recently Shane's presentation, how math became reality.
Yeah,
and
that
it's
one's
like,
mine too. I did that one for sure.
yeah, he's all well. Anyway, so whoever this guy's done is, I've been saying it to you. It's all
Wait, did he do how math became reality too? I thought you were
he didn't use
joking.
those exact words, but yeah, I have the book right over there. I'll screenshot some of the
Oh,
pages,
dude, like
and
so
you'll
you
be
just
like,
did, like
whoa.
a chapter on relativity or whatever.
Yeah, he's got relativity, and he's all over that. Yeah,
Okay.
and what you guys have been talking about, the GPS systems, which has been fascinating to me recently. So there's stuff in there about that. It's all stuff that would be on Æther Cosmology Discord. So
That's weird.
He's
It's
a very
almost like
sharp guy.
when you first mentioned the book, it struck me that there's a possibility out there that somebody really did act on the assertion made in the Telegram channel that I run, that in there I have written hundreds of words on a plethora of different subjects.
Someone wrote in the book for you.
And somebody said, "Yo, Stone, why don't you just like DB all that and turn it out in a PDF by subject?" You know what I mean? This is stuff that people obviously need to read, and it would be really cool to have everything you've said about everything in one source. And I'm like,
textbook. Yeah,
if only I had the extra 500 hours to do that, I'd get
looks like
right
this
on
guy
that
did it for
task. Yeah, I
If
was
somebody
thinking,
did
hey,
that,
did
I have
someone
to
do
say,
that?
I would read that. And no offense to Flat Earth Data, but I've talked to both of you, of course. I would definitely read what you wrote over anything Flat Earth wrote. Not to say his book's not good,
Well,
but
so cool. Thank you.
Well, I don't mind saying this now that I know it's not you, Stone. It's a different Stone. It's there's a million fucking typos in this thing. So
Yeah, definitely
Yeah.
not Stones. That is not
Yeah,
a
that is not
sea
what you
of
will
Flat
find in
Earth
my work. I
material
guarantee you
right
that,
there.
bro.
I thought maybe you didn't have time to pass it through an editor. Or I don't know. But yeah, there's a lot of
I
and
am
like
the
bad
editor.
turn.
That's the irony.
Yeah. But just to wrap up my point here, yeah, to anybody out there interested in this, like really dig in, and if you don't understand something, don't throw your hands up, or don't smugly that you act like you think you know the answer when you don't. Like really dig into it, define your terms, drill down. You don't know what you
Yes.
think you know. You don't know what you think you know.
Yeah, perfect. Because what you said earlier, just to finalize kind of on like what I was trying to respond to with like it's a little bit intimidating off the bat. But you know, just the awesome thing is that you don't have to be in a hurry because logic, all you have to do is just stick to simple logic. And as long as you stick to that, you really can't go wrong. And logic's pretty much on our side or on your side. You know, that's why you don't have to be in a hurry. As long as you're sticking to logic, you know, and like, you know, you perfectly, you know, kind of sum that all up. It's just kind of was saying, you know, like, don't make assumptions. Don't be hubristic. Uh, just take your time, read, you know, you can take your time figuring this stuff out. And especially if you just go, you know, have that foundation of basic logic. Like as long as you're not deviating from that at any point, and that's why I think Bennett, why we've kind of around here, why we're so big on the lab frame and talking about, you know, specifically when we talk about relativity and about modern physics, it's we talk so much about the lab frame because that's the logical, the philosophical underpinning of all of it. And you can go as far off in the weeds in any which way direction that you want, but as soon as you're deviating outside of reality to make your measurement, as soon as your measurement is outside of measurable reality, then you know you've violated basic logic. And so if you can stick to that framework, you don't have to rush into all the weeds so much. It's very, very good to get that understanding of things and the you know, build the foundations of knowledge. And but you know, there's no need to be stressed. Just just try to be logical and honest. But yeah.
For sure.
So yeah, this has been like a awesome meta discussion as far as I'm concerned. And I'd be very happy to keep going in this direction if anyone else has any thoughts with this.
Well, I would just add to what I had said before. So it's like I can get a basic understanding of flat earth, like the concept of it. I mean, I held on to that for years and was able to kind of bring that argument forward without ever having any kind of understanding in the physics and the holes in the physics. I just knew that the physical model of the globe didn't work. And I think for me, I just reached a point where it was like Stone had said something the other night where when the student is ready, the teacher will magically appear. And as soon as I was, all of a sudden, here you guys were. And so it is also there's a natural flow of it. So I like what you just said about taking your time, you know, because for me it was just I spent years just trying to gain the understanding and being to able to rebut even the basic uh you know everyday kind of conversation about flat earth. And now getting into this stuff, I you know it further solidifies my understanding of the flat earth concept. So that's been really wonderful. But if you would have presented this to me 4 years ago, though I would have been, you know, I don't know that I would have been ready for it. You know what I don't know that I would have been able to grasp it to the level that I can now, even though that's still very minimal. Um, I'm glad that I had, you know, years to kind of get an understanding of what it would actually mean to be on a flat earth, you know. So that's what I would say about that as far as your regards to taking your time.
And then, I mean, one final thought with that too is just like, then you can also just never feel like you're set. You don't have to second guess yourself in that point. In that, if you do it that way either, right? Like you don't have to feel like, oh, what did I rush into this without thinking it all through or whatever. Just with everything, just take your time and stick to logic and be honest with yourself. And then, like I think most of us will try to at least direct ourselves in a way where we're not afraid of the truth, right? I think that's generally how most of us get here. At least that's what we claim. And so, in that case, we should never be afraid of finding out the Earth's a globe. I'm certainly not. It would be confusing, that's for sure, because of a lot of things that I've looked at this point. But there's no reason to worry about any of it or rush to learn or whatever. Just stick to logic and trust reality. Trust the truth and just seek the truth or whatever. There's no reason to have anxiety about it, to be anxious about it. So yeah, so on that note, let's talk a little bit about how like me, Alan, and Shane do like our workflows for research, or anyone else that wants to chime in. If you have any thoughts about like how you look into a topic or anything, we have a few specific tools we want to talk about that we use. A lot of us around here use Zotero, and Zotero is it's essentially just a PDF management tool at the end of the day, but it's specifically useful for books and published papers. And I'll just share my screen real quick so I can show the application. So this is my Zotero database. And you can just see, like, essentially what you can do is you can drop a PDF right in here, and there's a database built into Zotero. It will look out using your DOI number, and it will essentially pull your bibliography information, or at least some of it, from the paper, from metadata, and then it will give you a system to organize your PDFs, essentially. And you have this folder structure. You can put everything in. You can put all your papers in multiple folders. And then if you want to pull up, like if you want to actually grab the PDF, you can right click on it and do show in live, or show. You can actually show the file. And then in Zotero, there is actually a PDF reader and editor, so you can even do highlights in here if you want to. And that is one route to go. But the main thing, the main purpose of Zotero is it's one place where, like, there was a while there, and I still do this from time to time, where I will be reading up on something, and I'll look up a paper that I know the name of or whatever, to find a quote in the paper, or to find a part of the paper to reference, to pull up, to share with people. And then, like, a week later, I need to reference that same part of that same paper. And so I go and I look up the paper again, and I pull the whole paper, I re-download the paper again, and I reshare the paper with people. And so I kind of end up doing that same process, and I'm kind of operating from the back of my head all the time. And then let's say that paper randomly gets moved behind a paywall, or it randomly disappears from Sci-Hub or something. Then all of a sudden, I am now citing a paper I don't have access to. And what good does that do? You might as well just be making up a source. And, it's just, it does not look good to cite a paper you don't have access to. And we've been accused of it, and it irked me when we were. But in any case, that's not really generally something we do around here. And a tool like Zotero will help to prevent you from doing that. Now, one thing that's really cool is that thanks to this cool application called Git, a little command line tool, and a back-end web server for it, we have now published my Zotero database, and I think we're going to put Alan's up there as well, to Git. And what that means is that if you want to look at our highlights and the papers that we have in our databases here, you can go to, I'll have to, we'll post a link in the video description, and then we'll also drop it in the chat here. But essentially you can go to the page. I'll pull it up on my second. I'll pull it up and share screen.
Zotero is awesome because I can grab a subset, like, oh, here's some GPS papers, and I can quickly get a works cited page that I can flex on Twitter real quick, right? And some dude named Kyle from NASA speaks out of turn, for example.
So like, so yeah, this is my Zotero database. I just pushed this to Git earlier or yesterday, and I click on go to file here. I can do a search, and so like, let's just say I want to search Einstein. Like now I have every, just an index of all the papers in here that say Einstein. The way Zotero stores the files is a little weird. But so this is just one quick way that you can now go and look through our papers. And then one other cool thing is like, if we pull up my copy of the on the electrodynamics of moving bodies, you'll see like even my highlights are in here. And yeah, so like now for me and Alan and anyone else that puts their Zotero database in Git, we can actually link people to the papers directly that we're citing. And then one other cool thing about having these in Git is that if anyone else is using Zotero and you like having physical copies of these papers, and let's say you want to just pull me or Alan's database, I think Alan's is the best one to pull. He has better organization than I do, and he has more thorough, he goes and does the legwork for papers that I don't always have the patience to, where he'll actually pull the proper bibliography files. And so his database is really great for that. So in any case, now that we have this stuff in Git, what we can do is Alan can drop his papers into Zotero, and then he can do a commit and a push to Git, and then all of the stuff that we're researching, all of our highlights and everything will always be on that web interface I was just showing you. And then also, if you're using Zotero and Git on your own computer, which I don't think we're going to do that tonight on the stream. That's just too boring for some people. But if you end up setting that up, and I can help you with that if you need, then you'll be able to always be able to do a quick pull. You'll never have to re-download any of our databases ever again, our Zotero databases. Like there used to be a thing where Alan had all this stuff in EndNote, and Alan would have to do an export of his entire EndNote library, zip it up, drop it on Telegram, and then people could go to the Telegram and grab that specific copy of his database. But now we can just do it all through Git with version control. And so Alan can just push every time he drops new papers in, makes new highlights, he can push it up to Git. And then I can even pull from that same sets. I can work in the same thing, do highlights in there as well, and push and pull to that same Git repository. And then anyone else that wants to follow along can have the up-to-date versions of everything from there. So that'll be handy moving forward. But so that's all Zotero. If you find yourself downloading scientific papers at all, it's a very nice tool. They just released a nice update for it. It's looking a little bit more, the UI is a little bit more sleek than it used to be, but it's a free tool to use. You can pay to have like a syncing service with it. But yeah,
or download the add-ons, and ittle pretty much do that itself, right? So.
Yeah, there's a ton of add-ons for it too. We've got a pretty well. Although there are not a ton of add-ons anymore, because the new version just released, but there will be. Like it's just new stuff will have to be redeveloped or whatever. Yeah. So it's if you're the type of person that if you find yourself downloading and re-downloading papers and stuff, and you want to have like a database of it all, highly recommend using it.
Or if you ever want to cite papers for anything you've done or plan to do or put in a presentation or said to anyone or used in a debate, super helpful there.
Yes. Well said. So that's pretty much Zotero. As far as I'm concerned, anyone else have any final thoughts or questions on that?
You guys
we moved
remember
to
when we used to
Obsidian.
use EndNote?
Yeah,
Shitty.
I do not miss
It's
that.
terrible times.
Cool. Well, next we'll talk about about Obsidian, which is, you know, on its face, it's a notes application, quote unquote. But it does a lot more than just that, as Shane and now Alan have shown. Shane's database, as many of you are familiar with, and you know, I'll just go ahead and pull it up. Is
Did
all
Toby?
What's
Did
that?
you bring us? Did you bring us Obsidian? Was it your nest egg? You were like, guys,
My
I have an
YouTube
idea.
channel.
And we were like, oh, that's right. That's right. It was totally you.
My
Yep.
YouTube channel was
Who's the OG?
originally like a really, really lame channel all about notes applications.
I can't remember a time when we didn't have it, and I just remembered that was because of you. So thanks, Toby.
Toby's YouTube channel was like an infomercial for note taking. He would be like, "Hey, do you take notes and want to have a better life? Here's how to do it. Use this program instead of the other ones
Yeah.
because this one is most betterer, and here's why." And like once you watch it and like use it, like he was right, dude.
Do you
It's
not wanna
funny
be
too. I've
retarded?
got
That is awesome.
I've got like I actually built like a small base of subscribers back then, and I have a few shorts that are like that kind of went viral talking about Obsidian. And then people will go and click on my channel, and it's like, why is this guy's talking about the Earth not moving and like an electrical gradient and like what? That's a flat Earth. Like it's just a total
Fair,
deviation
huh?
from what I originally did. But those old videos are still up. But yeah. Any case, so let's pull up Shane's database. Unless you want to pull it up, Shane, and show everybody.
Frankly, I consider all that to be good cover against the algorithm.
Right. I've thought about kind of even going back that direction with it in a weird way.
What do you want? You want me to share it?
Yeah, show us your database, and if you want to like just talk about it, if that's cool.
Well, it's the bestest thing in the whole world, Toby. It's my favorite thing that I've ever had. that I've ever had. It has allowed me to like start from just taking notes on something to publish a PDF to quickly source something to add combination of sources, like just to be like, oh, do I have sources on that? Well, yeah, I think I have a tab for that sources. Oh, in case I got lost, it's like the sources for the sources of the sources tab. Yeah, right. Need all that too. Just I mean, it's the coolest tool I think that I've ever used because you can do like how do you get to your web? Right. So it looks ridiculously intimidating in this view, but this is the interconnected web of the topics.
Is that the solar system?
It's Shane's solar database web.
Is that the heliocentric model, dude?
No, man. No, that's monkeypox.
Oh no.
So each one of these little pages, right? Like here we go, optics, and that would tie to all the other ones. Like, you know, it doesn't tie to geocentrism specifically, but it ties to geodetic uses and geodetic surveying, ties to G projection, and map software ties to 69 miles per degree. So the interconnected web, once you start building things and it's so powerful, so helpful, and so time saving. And the fact that I publish it, it was kind of like an afterthought. Right? It was kind of like, oh, everyone else can have this too. Sure, why not? But ooh, boy, is it good for me? and that's where it started. And I think honestly, it's like, oh wait, was there a tab for that? Yeah. Oh, you want to talk about the sun? Oh, you want to say the same 7 things about the sun that everyone says? It's like, oh, if only I do, right? If only I made a page that would answer all those stupid questions in order with math, with specificity, with some text, with some explanations, with whatever you want to put in here. The only thing it doesn't really do, it's not like a video site. You don't put tons of big files in here, but for text, images, PDFs, the odd PDF, it is like the coolest, best tool I've ever seen.
Jesus Christ.
Now, Shane's actual problem now is preparation for debate in trying to compress this into something that is a comprehensible length for a viewer. That there is just so much of this stuff. And he just says, okay, we're going to argue about this tonight. All right, here's the 500 reference points I'm going to cover in this debate
300
tonight.
slides.
yeah, well, however many slides it takes, bro. We got you covered. And
However many slides it takes for you to get it, man. I got them.
I think the only thing that's
Oh, good.
that's missing in this is a ranking of importance or severity or pertinence or applicability to the subject at hand. That there's a lot of data on a subject, but which ones do you want to cover first? What do you want to hit the guy over the head if you were just going to pick one? How do those rise to the top of that sub list? I think that's really, in terms of ordination, the only thing that's missing in this DB.
Yep.
Well, there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot you could go into about how to organize all this information. That's for sure. And how the best way to be like now with specifically with like Obsidian, there's like 100 ways. There's like actually kind of a lot of deep philosophical discussion to get into about like the best way to sort information, essentially, right? And in like, you know, one philosophy on it is that you kind of want to have all of your notes in small, they call it atomic notes, right? And then you can connect. One thing that's cool, like Alan was, or like Shane was showing with the grid view in Obsidian, is the way that you can find the way that random topics end up being connected to each other. And you can kind of end up realizing that things are connected to each other that you didn't really expect to be. You can kind of end up repurposing thoughts and notes and finding connections between thoughts and notes. A lot of people like Obsidian also as like a creativity tool. But it's also a fantastic research tool. But yeah, under the hood, at the very base, it's just like a notes application. But another thing it does, the other thing that was mentioned was slides, and you can actually do presentations from within Obsidian as well. You can there's a really simple way to just add some page breaks to your notes, and then turn that into a presentation, that's how Alan and I are. I think Shane too. No, Shane's still using Canva, but me and Alan, all of our presentations are done from within Obsidian, or within the Obsidian application at this point.
Yep, I'm sticking to Canva like a obstinate child.
Nerd. Hey, Toby, can I get that Git link real quick? And also, Espress wants a link to Shane's solar base.
Can we rename it? It'll break all the links that we haven't broken. Would it be worth it?
Yes.
We got a snore, or the cat find his lighter?
Sounded like an angry bear.
It's not Ken.
Alan, did your Git push ever finish?
Ooh, so I restarted my internet in the middle of that, and I'm not exactly sure. I checked my terminal, and it said it was good to go, but when I click on the website, I'm not really seeing anything. So,
okay.
Dude, I've never played around with this view. This is really awesome. You said this gives you other ideas? Boy, I could see that happening, right? Like, oh yeah, all past time is related to the sun and the moon and to the eclipse cycle. Very good, Obsidian. Like,
very good, Obsidian.
If anyone's interested in the topic, I definitely recommend Sunk A. Aron's How to Take Smart Notes. He talks about Zettelkasten note taking, which is what Obsidian is somewhat based on.
Dude, why did it throw all my attachments out in the asteroid ring out here? What, did I tell it to do that, or is that something that it did?
Yeah, no, you can change the settings to make it change some of that stuff up.
Oh, look at
You
some
go
of the isolated
to
stuff.
you click on the 3 dots and the 3 lines on the right there. Towards the top, I think there's something up, or somewhere there's settings for the grid view or graph view, whatever it's called.
Here we go. All
Alan's
the orphans. Look at they're called orphans. Oh.
Alan, I think it's here.
Nice.
Let me do a quick search. Let's search for
Great question. So, what's it called? What do we use? Obsidian runs on Mac, Windows, and Linux. So it runs on all of them.
Oh yeah, and
Safe.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
It's really cool because it's runs on Mac, Linux, Android, iOS, and you don't have to do their sync service. by default, it's just flat files. Everything, like all of this stuff that Shane's scrolling through here, this all gets put into files on his hard drive, and he's never going to get like locked out of it. And there's like a paywall where it's like, in order to access your notes, you need to pay us for cloud storage or whatever. Like, this is his database on his computer. And then he does pay a fee to publish his database. It's pretty cheap to publish through Obsidian Publish. And then he can just, I'm pretty sure he can just go through and click on each page and essentially publish them individually. There's two ways to do it. Either publish the whole thing or you publish specific pages. But yeah, so not only is it cross-platform and on like pretty much every platform you would want, but it's by default, there's no cloud storage involved. So that for better or worse, no cloud storage. Now, if you want, they have a cloud storage you can pay for. It's called Obsidian Sync. I think it's like between, depending on how much storage you need, like it's between like $5 and $12 a month, something like that. But generally, your notes don't need that much storage unless you're like crazy, unless you're like Shane was originally,
Crazy
where he
like
put like
Shane.
full videos and stuff in here.
Yep. Shane is actually the biggest space hog that I've ever met.
Shane's
So.
a bit of a space hog, but we respect him for it.
Putting in full videos was a mistake.
Now I just convert them to optimized condensed GIFs. Same effect.
So yeah, and other stuff with Obsidian, like it's a really powerful application. There's a ton of plugins and stuff. So if you want to learn more about it, it's kind of a rabbit hole of its own. But we have certainly found a lot of use for it, just for keeping track of notes and stuff. Especially this day and age where there's just so much information, useful to have your own kind of database of stuff.
It really is, especially if you do debates of your own accord, right? And you're like, oh, let me bring up a topic, and you're like, oh, I've never heard of that. Oh, wait. No, I have a giant database full of archived papers with backed up resources, quotes, citations. Yeah, I think I'm good. Right? It's so helpful.
Yeah, and then also Shane. So if anyone doesn't already know, I think anyone watching this probably already knows. But Shane, if I was, or I'll share it here. You can also find all of this online. Like I mentioned earlier, Shane published all of this. And so you go to adl.place, that has all of Shane's links. I'll go ahead and share my screen. And so we've got Shane's database, and this is what we were just looking at, but essentially in a published format on a web page here. So adl.place, click on Shane's database. There you go. And then we go to spaceaudits.net. Did you end up putting a link to that on here, Alan?
Well, I don't know how to edit that at all.
Oh, okay. Well, we can do that later.
Yeah.
All right. Well, how can you link me to your?
It's in the most recent main chat thing.
Sweet.
Daniel San just linked it.
Sweet.
Shout out to Daniel San. Dude, he said, read some more PDFs and get smart. Dude,
Dude, I love that opening.
It's
It's like, listen,
hilarious.
when you don't understand words, you fucking write them down, you look them up, you do some research, you come back, you do it again, you keep doing that until you understand the word.
Dude, and that process never stops, boys. It's that always.
Yeah.
For every subject. You just keep doing that.
Dude, you know how
Oh,
fun it
nah.
is to try and get Witsit to look up a new word? Pretty fun.
It's just frustrating hearing you guys, like Alan, your most, no, Shane, your most recent debate with Ruhif. And no, who was that guy? Oh, that piece of shit. Sorry, YouTube. That guy that was Red Voices, Red Rational, something.
Oh, Red's rhetoric.
Red's rhetoric.
Give me a break.
Yeah.
I think there's people that have pride and they just don't want to admit that they don't know what you're talking about. But I also think there's just bad actors. There's dishonest people. He was definitely really not in it to have an honest conversation with you. But it's just frustrating because you see some people, especially like Professor David, it's like you don't understand. It's okay to not know things, but it's another thing when you act like you just say word salad. It's like, no, it's not word salad. You just don't know what he's talking about. Anyway, I'm sure we all can sympathize with that.
Share the frustration there, dude. I like.
Yes, we share your angst.
I know, because Stone and Alan were in the background during that Reds thing, be like, just offering like advice or support, telling him to shut up, or like, yeah, he has you on mute or whatever. But dude, it's funny because he was like word salad, and then all the people were like, oh, I'm gonna go transcribe all that nonsense, and we're gonna make fun of how nonsensical it was. And I was like, ooh, good idea. I'm gonna go run
It's
that.
just so funny to me that these people have such they treat the subject with such kind of high-handed, smug dismissal, and that was immediately what sort of it made me interested in the subject, because of like, and then they just do victory laps like behind your back after the debate's over. It's
That's true. That's true.
ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
They do many victory laps, dude, and it's true. It's like, dude, the starting position is, well, whatever you say is wrong because your position is wrong. So I don't have to listen.
A priori assumption before you even start the argument. You're automatically wrong. So we're going to have this guy, this person that's describing this impossible geocentric model come in. We're just going to like laugh at him, like, oh, this will be a fun little show for us. That's the a priori assumption they have when they invite you guys into these rooms.
Well, I mean, have you heard of virtue jerking?
I have now. That's great. That's exactly what it is.
I just made it up today. It's when they come, they don't actually address anything you say or do anything or understand what you're talking about, but they want to be part of a social club, so they caress the other people who are there not understanding, and together they collectively express their ineptitude by telling you that you're stupid without, substantive specificity. So
it's right up there with sea lioning.
That's funny. That's good. Virtue jerking. Fantastic. Adding that into the rotation, the vocab rotation.
Not to be confused with virtue edging. All right.
Virtue edgelords.
Definitely edge words.
Dude, bro, man.
So yeah,
thanks to Obsidian.
in Alan's Obsidian.
So Obsidian's fantastic. Thank you for the link. Yeah.
You can find all Alan's presentations in here. It looks like he's got them organized. So like literally, you can find his recent presentations like right in here.
Oh, Alan, your database is on adl.place as well. It's at the very bottom. It's Alan's database. I was like, yeah, that's
I thought it was. I was looking for it. I wasn't seeing it for some reason.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, you can find it on adl.place too, apparently, and we'll link it up on his spaceaudits.net as well. But yeah, so there you go. You can find his notes and his presentations. And then one final tool, one thing to talk about is that we also have ethercosmology.com, and this was created to deal with a lot of the same, issues that Obsidian tries to solve and Zotero. But, this is a place for pretty much everyone to use. And, for us, it's useful for having just like a quick place to, like a public facing place to link things. So we'll drop a bunch of PDFs on here. We'll drop, like one single PDF in some cases. And then one thing that's nice about this webpage is anyone can make an account and comment. And then I can like it or whatever and respond. You can have full conversations. And there's also even a chat on here. So, like, I would recommend that if you're on the Discord server and you want to stay in touch with all of us, I would recommend creating an account on ethercosmology.com or also joining our Telegram chat, because there's just always a chance that, something could go down, the webpage could go down, the Telegram could go down, and even the Discord could go down. And in the past, we have had Discord servers shut down. So in that case, it's good to have another venue for everyone to be able to reach each other. But also just, in general, every time we publish a roundtable, you can find a link to that here, and we'll always make sure that there is a live media link for all the roundtables. and just some Truth 101 information, and just like generally the main category is where everything tends to go. But if you have a question, if you want to reach out to us, you can always try and send us an email, but you can also always come and just post it here. And, the idea here is for open discussion, or even if you just want to have a place to drop a PDF like we do to share with people or whatnot, feel free to use it for that. I host it myself, so don't worry. There's not like any, not really any data harvesting going on or anything like that. I can't promise I wouldn't maybe use your email address to shoot you an email at some point to, for anything related to the web page. But it's not going to be sold or anything like that. This is just, this is a tool that I built for all of us to use. And, an email address just happens to be a perfect unique identifier to use to have a proper, secure login setup. So in any case, so this is ethercosmology.com. What's that?
Is Ethercause file share different than this, right?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Here? Okay.
And that's more for us to use. I didn't really want to just hand out accounts for that to everybody because that doesn't have the same type of. This is perfect for actually having people sign up for accounts and such. And this is it's essentially a forum board, but with a bunch of built-in a bunch of additional functionality. If you post something in here, it also will go to the. I'm not sharing this with the stream by accident. If you post something on here on ethercosmology.com, then it will also go to our Discord main chat. So every new post that goes to main will also update in the Discord main chat. So there's a little bit of synchronicity going on there. But yeah, that's pretty much it. One final tool that I'll mention that we kind of didn't talk about was just OCR. I have messed around a bit with different OCR tools, Tesseract on Linux, and some online tools. And sad to say that nothing comes close to Adobe Acrobat in my experience. So if you need to OCR a PDF file or like some images or something, you're going to have the best luck using Adobe Acrobat, but that's a paid application. So if you can't get a hold of Adobe Acrobat, I don't have any great suggestions for you. I think there are some online tools that will work, and you can look into using Tesseract. But my experience with Tesseract was that it was kind of doo-doo for OCR. But OCR is really, really, really useful because
clutch. I wouldn't have been able to do anything regarding eclipses without Toby's help OCRing a whole bunch of data to start with, if I recall.
It's crucial to be able to control F something and to highlight stuff too, like to have proper text-aware highlighting is really useful.
Well, or to transcribe a whole bunch of PDF to Excel properly.
Yes, that too. Yeah, to transcribe or to also to translate. But so that's everything I wanted to cover pretty much regarding research and tools. And then I also think that we had a pretty nice little discussion there about just sourcing material in general. I did put out a video like a couple weeks ago about like just how to find papers. If you're looking to find papers and download papers, you can check that video out. It's on all of our channels or whatever. I think it's just called some research tips or reading and research tips or something like that. But the main idea with that is just you can find the DOI number of a paper and then go to a site called Sci-Hub and search for the DOI of the paper on Sci-Hub. And if you're trying to find papers in the first place, go to Google Scholar, go to a search engine. If you're looking for alternative search engines, try out Yandex, try out Presearch. Yandex.com, Presearch.com. Those are both. Presearch is theoretically decentralized search engine. It's not perfect, but I have found some. It does actually seem to be have a reliable decentralized algorithm of some sort. I don't know how exactly it works, but it's different than the other search engines. Worth checking out. And then Yandex seems to be pretty independent and really good about not censoring information. So those are both good. At the same time, don't give your data to Google. There are ways to do Google searches without directly going to google.com. But all that being said, Google still does have, the most powerful search algorithm. So if you need to search for a specific topic and then just add scientific paper to the end of it, use any of those search engines and then find that DOI number, go to Sci-Hub, search the DOI, or maybe you can just download the PDF from wherever you found it. But yeah, so that's pretty much all of that. Anyone else have any thoughts?
I
Everyone
think
go
you
download
covered it all.
Obsidian. Yeah.
Yeah, man. So, like Daniel was saying, when you're looking up definitions and stuff, Obsidian's going to be a great way to keep track of it. Highly recommend.
It's so cool. There's so many extensions and apps, community plugins, stuff you can get, visualizations. You can get helps with the web, and you make it different colors. You can import Excel sheets. You can start doing slides like they're doing. Whatever you want to do, Obsidian is probably going to help you do it.
Yep, I have 2 Obsidian vaults, they're called. I have one that I use for all my research and stuff for, stuff related to specifically kind of like this physics venture that we do here on Æther Cosmology. And then I have another one that's kind of my more meta life Obsidian vault, and I use that for more freeform notes and for like task management and stuff, although Obsidian's not necessarily the best task management tool. And I've also been using LogSeq a lot over the last 5-6 months, which is kind of similar to Obsidian, but it's better for bullet point note taking. Yeah, for anything like that, it's a really useful tool. Definitely worth checking out.
I have 7 libraries, but only
Nice.
because of
Oh,
that one time when I corrupted it so hard, I had to rebuild it. That's why I have
There's
7
a community.
copies.
There's a community plugin that I highly recommend, and it'll remind you when you're low on brushtail coffee.
Oh, wow, that sounds like a really useful plugin.
If you go to
Thank you.
community plugins and then search brushtail.coffee, if you type that into any search engine or URL, brushtail.coffee, it'll take you to the website to order coffee whenever you need it. When
That's
free.
right. You want fresh roasted
Budget
coffee roasted by me on my grill, go to brushtail.coffee or brushtailcoffee.com. That's BRUSHTAIL coffee.com, brushtail.coffee. And yeah, I roast it myself, and it will be roasted, within a few days, usually within a day or 2 of when you place the order, but then it will always be shipped like immediately after it's roasted. So you'll get very fresh roasted coffee. And in my opinion, it's the best. I pick the coffee that I love, and I roast it fresh because I love fresh roasted coffee. So yeah, yeah. Anyone else? Any thoughts, questions?
First off, I definitely want to thank you guys bringing a wealth of resources and information to all of us. You guys put in the work, and on behalf of everybody, I can't thank you enough on how much we rely on citations from the stuff that you guys put out. Well, but if I may, just take 2 minutes to comment on something you said that I thought was really important. Less than 2 minutes. I think one thing I found out coming into the truth community is the unintentional bad advice of do your own research, right? Because I take it for granted that not everybody knows how to do their own research, right? So doing your own research is the unintentional worst advice you can give if they don't know how to scrutinize between useful information and useless information. And I think something that you brought up was the key, is the logical inference on how to discern between some of this stuff. Whether it's scrutinizing papers or ADL place information and Alan's resources that he now provided, being able to scrutinize this stuff is important. I've seen Stone, I've seen Toby scrutinize some papers and found some mistakes, and they're like, "Oh, I don't know about that," and that is huge to be able to do. I'll point out one in particular example of logical inference that's important to discern between an antecedent relationship and an unfalsifiable supposition. Let's say, for instance, we take on the notion that if wave propagation necessitates a medium, then electromagnetic wave propagation necessitates a medium as well. It's an easy 1-to-1 ratio. We can name that medium whatever we want. We choose to name it ether, but you can understand that an antecedent relationship is necessary due to the nature of wave propagation in and of itself. Now let's take a look at something else that somebody might bring up. You know what? I'll screen share it real quick. You guys seen
Look
this
at him.
paper?
Look at him go. Hold on. Let me just
Trying to
put you on
get
the
down,
stream.
trying to
Here we
get down
go.
with the crew, trying to be down like you guys.
Yeah, man, this guy's kicking some ass.
All right.
So we've all seen this paper from the Royal Society, right? Just at one look, we can interpret it, right? We've
Little dish of the cabin.
Indeed, the dish of the cabin. An interesting thing about the Cavendish experiment, there's a problem with repeatability, right? We've isolated from external factors, and getting these balls to attract is an issue. So alongside of repeatability, there's also another issue, right? If we take a look at the data is what it is. But let's take a look underneath that data. What does that data say, right? If mass attracts mass via this Cavendish experiment, right? And what does that entail? Does that entail that there's a 4D manifold between said balls that are bent so that the balls attract via curved linear trajectory? Something that Stone pointed out is an oxymoronic nomenclature in and of itself. So it's not important. It's important to not only just understand the data, but interpret that data in a way that aligns with reality. How does this in accordance with reality in a way that's logically sound? So it's not just understanding the data and just jotting it down. When there's citation provided via citation with the interlocutor that you're engaged with, understand that there's a responsibility to interpret that data as well. So I just felt the need to, I'd be remiss not to add that near the end, because we're going to do a lot of research, and discerning between useful information and useless information is going to be key. So thank you for the presentation. Thank you for an added bonus of giving another resource that we can tap into. And you guys are great.
Yo, good point. Thanks for sharing that. That's like, that could honestly be like a whole nother discussion, right? Like how to how to read these papers. It's like a whole different topic. Very, very, very crucial information, man. Well said.
Remaining logically consistent in your own position is definitely pivotal, right? When you confront information, or like, hey, when you spend all your time behind enemy lines reading papers by hostile witnesses, right? To use in a debate where the first person that you bring it up, they're gonna be like, yeah, but do they think the earth is flat? And you're like, ah, that's right. I know that you're an idiot. And that you don't know what I'm about to say about whatever the ether or the interferometry or whatever the paper's about. They're like, yeah, but does he think it's round? So that's the kind of person you got to bring it up against, right? But to know for yourself when it's logically consistent and when it's not, because I think when we started this, you forget that when you're studying it, you're kind of from an inverted perspective, right? So you're reading a paper from a dude who thinks the stars are moving because the earth spins left to right, but or right to left because it's left to right, right? So you're already inverted to understand what their conclusions are in a paper. And then when you're done, to extrapolate and pull that back out to the actual reality is sometimes tricky, right? You forget, oh, I gotta invert what my result were because I was doing the test upside down. To invert it's complicated to think about, but I think it's something that I ran into a couple times in the beginning, trying to extrapolate back to my actual position reading hostile witness papers.
Yeah. So, well said as well. Anyone else? Any final questions? Should we wrap things up here?
No, just thank you to the lads. Get your flute, go to Obsidian, and get your terms right.
Daniel's gonna
Appreciate you guys.
Well said, man. I think we need to wrap it up on that. That's perfect closing.
Can we get Dan a T-shirt or something, or an Ether cause roll, or give him a janitor sticker, or what? We gonna do something.
We do
Yeah,
have a
we'll do
guy in
something
charge of
after that.
merch.
Do we? Okay.
Yeah, I'll clean
There's our
the
merch
toilets. I'll be the janitor.
No, we
For
already
sure.
got one of those. We
No,
gotta
we
give you
can use
something
two.
else.
We can use two.
Two janitors.
There's a lot of
Have we
cleaning to
told
do
the other
around
one
here.
no?
I don't know, man. He sounds a little bit more like a drill sergeant. Y'all better get smart. Y'all gotta get your mind right.
Get your mind right.
Maybe
Marketing
assistant. Maybe
director, I'm
assistant
thinking?
principal.
Bestest student, but all misspelled and shit.
The whip.
Well, cool. I'm going to close out the stream here. Thanks again, everyone, for listening in, and we will see you guys on Thursday. Oh, one final thing real quick, I guess while we're live. So we're going to adjust schedule again. We're actually going to go back to what we had like months and months ago. Essentially, we're going to go back from doing 3 days a week, which has kind of been 2 or 3 days a week-ish for the last however many months. We're going to go back to 2. So Tuesday nights are going to be what we're doing here right now. Æther Cosmology roundtables. These will continue as scheduled, 8 p.m. Eastern. And, sometimes historically these were originally roundtables, and then they were kind of more presentations for a while. And then now we've kind of been going slightly back towards discussions. So these will continue to be exactly like that. They will be discussions and or presentations. Maybe kind of like more of a led discussion, or maybe an open discussion, or maybe a straight up presentation with questions afterwards. But we're going to continue with these. And then on Thursdays, since we're going to also be doing open discussions on Tuesdays here, we're going to move reading nights to Thursday night. And we're not going to continue necessarily just reading chapter after chapter of the same book as we've been doing. That was never really intentional. It was just kind of how things worked out. And we still do want to continue reading from Seeing Red by Halton Arp, but it'll be more of a reading and research, so not necessarily just reading from the same book every week, but I think we're going to do more of like a bring your own paper to read type of thing. So if you have any sort of paper you want to bring to read, or if you have a video you even want to watch, just like a research related video for everyone to watch, feel free to show up on Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern with a paper to read or a video to watch, or maybe even a question to ask. And then, if we will probably return to Halton Arp Seeing Red at some point, and also probably back to James DeMayo's book as well. But probably more papers in general. And so that's what's going to be going on. Tuesday nights, open discussions and presentations, 8 p.m. Eastern. Thursday nights, reading and research, 9 p.m. Eastern. And that's not to say we won't do other things on other nights as well. Of course, Alan and Shane are always doing Flat Earth Fridays on Friday nights, as far as I know. I think that's always going on pretty much. And then, we'll also probably have random presentations on Sundays, Mondays, Wednesdays, whenever. You never know. Just as far as what's scheduled week after week, Tuesdays, Thursdays. So just a heads up on that, everybody. And I'll go ahead and put that in the chat as well. But thanks again.